Good afternoon, folks. Good morning, if you're on the West Coast. And welcome to Free Together, Free Apart, Hacking Family Success. I'm Eric Thompson, here with the Vermont Center for Family Studies. And I'm very pleased to have as my guest today, Jake Merle, who's going to talk to us about Queen Bee leadership. The title's a little bit of a joke. In Indian scripture, it is said that the entire manifest universe emerges out of dynamic silence, complete silence. And in nature, we have, as many of you know, these queen bees who I think some of them, they start the colony down in the depths of the colony and stay down there for years and years doing absolutely nothing but providing eggs and make the entire hive buzz and hum and make honey and all that stuff. And Jake Merle and I met during the Bowen Theory and Organizations community of practice that is run by the Bowen Center in Washington, D.C. If you're interested in learning about applying Bowen Theory to leadership, it's a great place to go. And we were chatting, and he was explaining to me that he's gotten to a place with his congregational leadership. He's the lead minister at the Oak Ridge Unitarian Universalist Church in East Tennessee, where really the other parties in the group are carrying out a lot of what goes on in this organization. And I know from my life as a business coach that many leaders think carefully about this process of doing less and accomplishing more, and transitioning to the point where the work of the organization gets done through others. And it's a beautiful vision of succession where an organization isn't overly reliant on one person. So welcome, Jake Merle.
Thanks, Eric. Great to talk with you again, and nice to be with the group that's assembled here.
Yes. Jake, I learned, is also a graduate of the Harvard Divinity School and the Iowa Writers Workshop, which is one of the most prestigious writing programs in the nation. And he's also a licensed marriage and family therapist and former chaplain in the U.S. Army Reserve. That's quite a resume, Jake. Are you into fly fishing or something as well, probably? Or
Yeah, I'm working on my shiny object problem of any new thing. I like to go after it.
Yeah, and you're an executive coach who works with leaders of lots of different types. And I think any successful minister is a leadership coach.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean, that's a good frame for it. I think some of congregational life is about trying to see people as they are through the masks and the pretense and however they think they had to show up, but see people as they are with the gifts that they have, and then see what opportunities can they connect with and flourish. One of the things that's really influenced me, years ago, I read the book by Daniel Pink called Drive, and I forget if we talked about this or not, but for intrinsic motivation, for people running on their own steam, three entities are important: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. If somebody has a chance to practice and get good at something; autonomy, if they can make meaningful decisions; and purpose, if it's connected to some larger cause, then they're off to the races. And so just figuring out what that is for people, it's amazing. Yeah.
I'm really interested in the way you put that seeing people that as they are involves seeing their strengths. Maybe my background in clinical psychology, when I hear the phrase seeing people as they are, you're sort of picturing analyzing their weaknesses, but you immediately didn't use the phrase that way. So I think I'm really interested in this. Is maybe you could describe for us the state of things, this Queen Bee leadership situation that I'm jokingly calling Queen Bee leadership. And then we'll get into a little bit how how you feel that's developed. And and maybe return to that beautiful point you just made there.
Sure. So, uh, at our congregation, the minister and the staff do not initiate anything at its best. I mean, we there have been times where we've tried, but the setup, the design is that any ministry that wants to happen needs 5 people who say, here's what we're going to do in service of the congregation's goals, and here are the resources we need. Here's the training, here's the staff time and attention, here's the money or the use of facilities. It's sort of like a little mini grant proposal. And then,
Give me one example.
um, well, gosh, there's a meals program that
Okay.
gives meals for people once a month. So, they
Mhm.
put a plan together and serving the wider community as part of our mission.
Mhm.
Um, and so I and a couple of the other core staff really look at these ideas, and we know people. So we know, for instance, if there's an excitable Lone Ranger who has big ideas but may not follow through. That doesn't mean we give the thumbs down, but it means we say, hey, we think you need to find, this kind of person, et cetera, so
Mhm.
that when it launches, it really needs very little management. So there's a lot of sort of self-regulating, self-driven, intrinsically motivated groups out there that are doing all kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think you explained to me that you've really gotten to a position where, is this correct? Would you say that you're kind of doing less and less and less as the years go by?
That's right. Uh, which is a
Tell us
blessing.
about that. What did you
Yeah.
mean when you said that?
Well, partly I'm terrible at doing. So that's good
That
for
kind of helps.
everybody. Yeah, I
You had
mean,
an
that's part of
advantage,
how the
Jake.
right, right. People who are competent will struggle with this more than I do.
Mhm.
There's a systems thinker I love named Donella Meadows, and she's got this graphic of an iceberg that goes, so the surface above the water is some event, and underneath it is a pattern of events. Underneath that's the structure that creates the pattern of events. But
Mm.
underneath that is the mental model. What are the values, the images, the assumptions? And I find that more and more my work is happening down there at the level of values and mental models. And out of that, people know how to figure out things that they care about.
And they are doing that. Because, I'm sure some people who might look at this model might say, well, you can just not going to, nothing will happen, but that's not going on in East Tennessee. Would you say
It
that's true? It's a dynamic community?
absolutely
Mhm.
and lively, thriving. Yes, I think it required me to sit on my hands and to especially when we were implementing this about 10 years ago. I've been in the church 18 years now, but this is about 10 years ago when we set up this design, because I thought, geez, what if nobody does anything? And there is, with built-in dependency on the leader, like in any system, there were people who would try to hook me in, and I would get hooked in. But gradually we built the culture where the expectation was that it was up to them, and I was there as a resource, but I wasn't going to be anxious. It has also required me to see ideas that I thought were great ideas that were just perfect for the church, and to just let them float by because it didn't have the buy-in. It didn't, people didn't want to do it. So I have to be okay with letting
Yeah.
that go.
How about ideas that you're like, I don't know if that's really the right idea for this church? Did you ever, what do you think about that? What in this spot that you found yourself in, how do you handle those?
When I think because we are so clear about what we're about and who we're for, and what I mean, we are here to serve the wider community of Oak Ridge, to bring joy and justice to the world.
Mhm.
Because we talk about that and because we enact it, less and less do bad ideas or ideas that are just off mission come to the surface, because the system, being a self-regulating system,
Mhm.
handles that. Or people already know that that's not going to work. Or if it does come to the our executive team, often it's that people need to think through things a little bit more. And so
Yeah.
it's not a thumbs up or thumbs down process. It's a conversation where
Right.
I or one of the other ministers might say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So it's
Yeah.
it's more of a discovery
Questions.
process. Yeah.
You in I just thinking, Jake, it's a really interesting example of a well-defined presence, a well-defined non-anxious presence. And I should mention that Jake has done a lot of postgraduate training at the Bowen Center for the Study of the Family. They have a postgraduate program. I know many of you know that, and Jake's been there, done 6 years there, and has an evolving leadership role there at the Bowen Center. Would you say that this journey you just described for us was were you figuring that out in the postgraduate program, or how'd you
Well, I
how's
guess I
Bowen theory connect to it?
yeah. Without going into the whole story, my second year in church, I got myself in a lot of trouble. It's such that somebody was called up 17 people trying to get me fired.
Okay.
'Cause I was being stubborn and just I
Hmm.
went to a conference of ministers who studied systems thinking. And on the threshold of that door, I heard a room full of people laughing about catastrophe,
Hmm.
and all of my ambition to be a big world beater in a nice suit and all that kind of all that other vision of success just melted away. And I thought, I want what these people have. They were talking about the roof of our fellowship hall is going to fall in and we don't have money to pay for it. And then everybody would laugh. And I thought, this ease, this capacity to be non-anxious in the face of real challenge, that's what I want. So just chipping away at it, uh, and certainly the concepts of Bowen theory help me get out of my reactivity or my assumption. They just help me think again about what I'm seeing.
Can you share a little bit about that? This journey of knowing and managing one's own reactivity is precious to me personally, and has just been such a simple, valuable framework for my clients. Over 25 years now. So I'm so fascinated by that. Can you tell us a little bit about the details of that journey for Jake Morrow?
Yeah. Um, so the way I boil it down, differentiation of self is three things: take a stand, stay in touch, and keep your cool. And so I really work on take a stand, know what my principles are, what my role is, what my lane is, stay in touch, be open and in contact and in a relationship with others who see and think differently. And then thirdly, keep my cool, manage my anxiety enough that I can hang in there, tolerating the difference.
Hmm.
If it were that itself, that would be a lifetime journey, because I still, every day I'm falling short of that mark. But I think to have the language when things go awry, to be able to say, am I clearly defined enough? Do I know what principles are here? Am I in touch? Have I been listening enough? Am I managing my anxiety? And I've developed ways of, if I send a long email, I know that I'm dysregulated, and so I need to come back to myself or take a walk.
Mm.
And I guess I'd say over time, that working on myself on, and you said gifts, but earlier, but no, I think being able to see myself and my profound limitations as well. I was just meeting with some church people this morning, and I said, well, one of my strengths isn't management, and they both cracked up because that is an understatement. Uh, that, and the freedom to be honest about what I am good at and what I'm not good at, rather than trying to pretend that I'm good at all things, allows me to be a clearer partner with people that I want to work with, and to more clearly invite the help and collaboration that I need.
Mm. Wow, that's very interesting. Probably a feature of non-anxious, that you can be non-anxious about the fact that you're human and have the limits that you have, and then also to be non-anxious about the strengths you have. Um, can you tell me a little more about taking stands on this journey of dynamic non-doing?
Yeah. When I early in studying systems thinking, so this is like 2004, 2005, I had the idea that differentiation meant throwing down anytime, just in any room, just picking a fight and saying, well, I think differently. And I think that as I have gotten clearer on what it means, at least for me, that it is more about um, adhering to principles and often focusing on process. Anymore, I am less going to the mat for certain outcomes that I want, and more vigilant about what the process looks like. And I would say that that itself is a way that defining myself doesn't mean a big speech where I'm pounding the table. It means being clearly the person or one of the people who others have learned to expect will show up in a certain way with certain objects of attention and certain values that that they know who I am, and I'm so I think that that has been a shift, and it means losing a lot of the battles, or leaving things unresolved. That's for me, part of tending to process and remaining open and curious, means living with the anxiety of ambiguity.
Did I, that's interesting. In my leadership development course, I have a section on I positions, and there's a section on quiet or silent I
Yeah,
positions. And I feel
yeah,
it's very important to clarify that many of the most powerful I positions are just silent, because it's more about a person knowing what I will do, what I won't do. Um, did I hear you right that you will take stands on principles more than on what Jake wants? Was I following you when you said that you attend to principles and process in your effort to take stands?
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Um, and
Give
I
me an
guess
example.
what's that?
I didn't want to interrupt you, but could you,
Oh,
in some way, I'd love to hear an example of taking a stand on principle to give some color to that.
well, we built a new building about 6 years ago, and the committee that was running the process, some of them had built public buildings before. They were a very accomplished group. They could figure things out, but
Mhm.
it was important to me that at the end of the day, the congregation, the community, had a sense of buy-in and ownership, that they saw where their thoughts had been woven into the final building. And
Uh-huh.
so even when at the committee meeting they would have gotten to the right answer,
Mm.
that part of my role was to say, okay, how can we make this into a dilemma? How can we make this into a question for the purpose of bringing the people along? So I
Mm.
guess that's an example of
Yeah,
when it was
and it's a
important.
good example of a stand that involves questions, not pounding.
That's right. Yeah.
And I was thinking about your other point about relationships. Was it stay connected? Is that one of your three?
Stay
uh,
in touch. Yeah.
Stay in touch, and that may, if you're not in touch, your eye positions may run in the direction of a phony eye position, a blustering non-eye position whose essence is actually trying to control others. So this being in touch part, will you tell us a little bit about that, the journey of being in touch, and probably including with parties who maybe sometimes would like to see you canned over the years?
Yeah. Uh, Yeah, I so I guess I will say, even from middle school and high school, I was a bit of a butterfly. I went around to different cliques, and I'm just interested in different people, and I think that that tendency has served me well, because not only in the congregation but also throughout the wider community, I'm just interested to, I'm interested to know people who are living on the streets, and I'm interested to know people on city council. And
Mm,
because I have those relationships,
mm.
then my perspective on civic issues just has more data than it would if I wasn't in relationship. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess I'd
I'm
say, and
somewhat naturally,
what's that?
I'm somewhat naturally to you to be in
Yeah,
touch with a broad spectrum of the people around you.
when it is difficult, because the I think part of leadership is, as I say, differentiation is not a popularity contest. So part
Mm,
of leadership is being willing to be unliked or to have people angry.
mm,
um, and that has become a stronger and stronger principle, that no matter how anxious I become of making contact, um, that I will go and find a way to make contact. About 6 years ago, our congregation put a Black Lives Matter sign out front of our church building, and in response, a large group of people in the town uh, held a Blue Lives Matter rally where the speakers were denouncing us. I thought it was important to go to that rally.
mm.
Uh, and I was nervous. I mean, I didn't know if, somebody was going to threaten me or what, but I thought, I have a friend who says, in an age of dehumanization, our task is rehumanization. And
Mm,
so it was important for me to go to that rally to demonstrify myself in their eyes and to demonstrify them in my eyes, to rehumanize one another, and to just kind of go around the crowd shaking hands, and not I was not trying to be a showboat or to make a, climbing up on stage, but I was trying to stay in relationship. And I've found, I'd say, in recent years, I've found that often making contact on a matter that's unrelated to the conflict is even more helpful. If I
mm.
can, if somebody's angry at me about something in the city, if I can talk with them about their grandkids or about the Tennessee Vols or something,
Yeah.
then we've got common ground.
Yeah, the Vols probably earn every penny they get as being a detriangling object for
There you
so
go.
many people in a state like Tennessee. Um, I would love to hear one story, even really brief, just a little taste of that that journey to go and meet the one and rehumanize them. Someone you met or somebody you had a talk with about grandchildren or something like that.
Yeah. Um, well, there is a minister in town who is uh, very has very different views than I do,
Mm,
and he at one point would not be in the same room with me
mm,
because he thought that I was spiritually dangerous.
mhm.
And I think in my earlier years, I would have chased him down almost like a trophy that, but but that would have been more about my own anxiety and my own need for that would have been more about fusion. And
Yeah.
so instead, finding opportunities at at the local band concert or that kind of thing, to just wave from a distance, to just living systems need, including families and work systems, just need time for shifts to happen. It's not a one and done road to Damascus thing. It's so I, we worked on that relationship, or I worked on bridging that cutoff, and we have been involved in a couple of citywide things. We still, really disagree, but
Yeah,
he's less allergic to me.
that is beautiful. I want to say a few things that you're making me think about here, and I'm sharing my screen for a sec that relate to some of what you've said. So uh, we had a special event here in January on this polarization leadership, and the recording is available for purchase on our website. But Jake, this professor Matthew Dickinson had a sabbatical year, and what he did with it was he went to Trump rallies
Hmm.
and he
Mhm.
constructed what he considered to be a much more neutral um, research tool to
Hmm.
understand the minds of the people at those rallies. And he presented on some of that research to us, and generally his very powerful message about how we are less polarized than we are often told we are, which is very interesting to hear an academic talk about that
Hmm.
with a lot of data behind it.
Yeah.
And his idea that we should be aware that we are much more similar than different. And in that conference, we also had a beautiful story by one of our faculty members, Kim Ziegelman, on overcoming estrangement in her own family. And then just last week, we had this event with the amazing Dr. Walter Howard Smith.
Yeah.
And Jake, he talked a lot about what you were just talking about in terms of relating. He was a major change agent in the child welfare system in Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
And when I asked him, how'd you do it? He said, I just knew everybody. And he
Yeah.
talked quite a bit in this presentation he did, which is also available on through our website, about relating to people who thought that he was crazy. And
Yeah.
people can get pretty emotional about child abuse.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so I also wanted to just mention that Jake, I'm gonna talk a little about some upcoming events here in a minute, but that Jake has written more than two books, but here's two of them. Is Randy Bradley a novel?
It's novella, a short novel, I
Oh,
guess. Yeah.
uh-huh. And then recently, The Christian Art of Forgiveness, and you can get those on Amazon. Uh, is this a good pause point and let people have a breakout, or you got anything else you want to put in now? Seems like it, maybe. So we have half an hour left in our discussion, and at this point, I think I'll allow you folks to go into breakouts in a moment. And this is something we do on this Free Together show. I'm going to just share my screen again. And then after about 10 minutes, you can come back and we can make this a conversation with Jake. And these are the questions that I use as prompts. As you notice, they are very unsophisticated, simple. What's this discussion got you thinking about? Is raised about leadership. And suggestions for how to operate in the breakout, which will be groups of three, is that just because the time is so short, it's not so much a time to meet as a chance to just put together some of the thinking that's been stimulated by what you've heard here. And I think people learn by talking sometimes and thinking out loud. And just before I do that, I just want to quickly go through what's coming up here. So I actually have two different shows. This is from my business Thompson leadership development. And right after this, half an hour later, I'm going to get interviewed. The tables are going to turn, and a young executive is going to interview me about coaching leaders for 15 years. And I had to put this one into our VCFS program because Adam Bunting is the son of our founder, Dr. Ann Bunting. And some of you may have known during her career. She's retired now, Dr. Bunting, amazing person. And her son is really quite something. He's an extraordinary high school principal who's created a very unique culture there. And I'm going to talk to Adam about how he did it. And I wanted to mention this one. This happened a couple weeks ago that I interviewed. Ernie Pomerleau is a very well-known business person here in Vermont. It's actually, his cousin is married to Senator Patrick Leahy, very accomplished person, and he talked about the incredible journey of grief and loss that he's been through with deaths from cancer, including the death of his daughter this fall. And the amazing thing about this story, I think it was one of the most special interviews we did, was it was a door into a very profound spirituality for him. So he shares about that. I thought you might like to know about it. You don't have to pay anything to watch the recordings of these things. And we're going to keep going with it in April. He's going to be coming back to talk to us again. So I'm going to stop sharing and get this breakout room. Those leader site interviews can be accessed through my website, Thompson Leadership Development. So give me a moment here while I set up these breakout rooms. Okay, so this is set for a timer for 10 minutes for you to interact, and then we'll come back and we'll have a little more time with Jake. A few more things about our organization. One is that we're very grateful to our sponsors, including the Pomerleau family, who sponsored this series to help us do what we do, which is we're about strengthening families. And we do it by training family therapists and advisors, and we've been doing that for 25 years, including in our professional training program, which we're taking applications for now. I want to say just a few things about it. I think it's a very high quality program. The presentations that our faculty are doing, I think, are better than the ones I've been doing. It's kind of a friendly place. We have a sense of community, a community of practice, people trying to understand and apply Bowen theory together. It's a mix of different types of professional people who are in there. It's probably half therapists, but then there's lots of other groups. There's coaches, there's people in ministry, business leaders. And when you sign up for it, we've worked to keep it affordable through the generosity of our donors. So it's $1,400, and you get 3 hours times 7 meetings plus 4 coaching sessions. So it's kind of easy for professionals to do and affordable. And you also get all our conferences for free during that year if you sign up. So let me know if you'd like to know more about that. Jake, how was your breakout?
It was great. I got to catch up with Elaine Boomer, my old buddy.
How do you know Elaine?
She and I did workshops together here in Tennessee for a few years on coaching clergy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I should mention that your center there, the Bowen Theory Education Center in Chattanooga, very active, thriving Bowen training center.
Yep, it is, and with a training program for clinicians in the Chattanooga and East Tennessee area. So it's, yeah, good to have a whole network.
Have you offered? Of course, you offered it online this year, just like we did.
Yeah.
So that's changed things. Now we have people from all over the country in our program.
I will be interested to see with the Bowen network, all the centers, if instead of geography being the defining thing, whether there will be other ways of differentiating. If some people will specialize in organizational application, or other people in who knows what.
Yeah, I think the truth is they're all different, and that's good. There's a diversity. I worked probably for too long, Jake, at trying to become Mike Kerr. And I wasn't that good at it, Jake. I did okay. I published a couple of good papers, but I'm really better at being Eric, as limited as Eric is. So yeah, our program is really different than the postgraduate program, but I think there's a positive mutual reciprocity with people from our program going there to get a different flavor and coming here to get a different flavor.
Yeah.
So I want to open it up. We have about at least 10 minutes. Anybody want to ask Jake something or follow up on a point he made? Or I think Tom has something. Yeah.
We weren't sure that you covered keeping our cool, and that's what I'm most anxious.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm just talking about self-regulation, and often people, will try, including myself, will try to regulate anxiety by requiring something of others. Will other regulate? If you calm down, then I can calm down. And so being aware of the responsibility in myself for my own anxiety, and knowing that it's okay to have some, but just to be aware of it. And for me, that, in a stressful meeting or encounter, that can look all kinds of ways. It can look like deep breathing, or taking written notes, or writing out a question before I say it. Our church once hosted a dialogue on the Israel-Palestine situation, and the room was evenly divided. And the facilitator, I just remember somebody asked him a very provocative question, and he looked down at his chest for a full minute before he lifted his head to respond to the question. That, for me, that remains the model of self-regulation, that he wasn't going to speak until he had calmed himself down.
Maybe he was saying, "Thy will be done." Maybe he was whispering to himself, who the other is to you is intricately connected to who you are to them. One of my favorite Mike Kerr quotes from his recent book. And Jake Walter. So Walter did a lot of work with sex offenders. He tried to respect the families of abuse. And that was a radical journey that he took. Very, very powerful journey of trying to respect family process where there is child abuse, while at the same time doing right by the children who are in danger. Wow. And I think in that talk he gave us, he presents an amazing example of a person who's able to manage themselves in the face of something really stimulating.
Yeah.
You mentioned this thing about regulating myself by regulating the other. And I think that idea, for some of us, just that idea is so powerful. To understand, to make that analysis that the experience I'm having, that thing that I'm upset about, is not fundamentally the responsibility of the other party.
Yeah.
And that was certainly helpful to me on some of my challenging spots. Anybody else want to get in on this and share some thoughts, or ask Jake a question, or explore a point further? Love to hear what you're thinking about. Yes, Reverend Sadie Lansdale.
Oh, hey everybody. Hey Jake. So I talk to Jake a lot actually, but I think this question might be useful for other people too, I hope, which is Jake, this like Queen Bee style, dynamic undoing, how it sounds to me.
Not undoing.
That's fair.
Done that too.
Yeah, well, gives you a picture of where I am these days. Jake, can you just give us some reflections on what kind of credibility do you think you need to have with the congregation in order to be able to do that? Like, what gets read as a sort of stepped back leadership, and what gets read as incompetence? And can you help us think through some of that? I mean, so I'm in year 3 of a settled ministry, and I'm 30. And as you can see, I'm a young woman type person. And so, just like these things are.
That's a great question.
They happen differently at different ones of us, but in ways that are weird, So I'd just really love to hear more about that from you, Jake.
I think it is real that that people are positively biased toward me for reasons that have nothing to do with my deftness of leadership. And so that is real, and other people will have different projections put upon them, as they step into leadership. I think credibility is, so that said, and that's a big factor. Uh, it is less about expertise and more about clear differentiation. So people, I have uh, I have zero credibility. I have very little credibility with the administrator at church that I will turn in my credit card receipts on time. She does not experience me as an expert on that in that regard. Uh, I have a lot of credibility that I will be rigorously respectful of people, no matter if they're in my face or whatever. People know that they can count on that with me. So I guess I would say that it's not about being checked out or half asleep. It's about being clearly defined in relationship to the system. And to the extent that I have defined my role as keeping in touch with people, being as in touch with the system that so that I can be properly, accurately oriented, but also about the work of mental models, talking, putting forth values, and that's and not picking up the undone work that others haven't done. But I don't know. What do you think about that? About from where you sit in your leadership?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I am, I'm sort of always stuck between wondering something like, there's like, what do I feel like I have to prove to them because of my like stuff? What do I actually have to prove to them as part of the building of relation? So what do I feel like I have to demonstrate? What do I actually have to demonstrate in the process of building our relationship? Especially so early in a settled ministry. And then, how is my leadership making the ground more fertile for them to discover the things that they care about that are in line with the mission of the congregation. And, especially during this year, there's just been so much tugging. I wonder for some of the rest of y'all if you're feeling like sort of tugged between like the stuff I know about leadership principles and this catastrophe of a year where like everything's really uncertain.
One thing I know is if you're a leader, you're going to make some messes no matter what you do.
And for me, I think I struggle with this about when there are messes, even messes of my own making, and my anxiety, my shame drives me to try to fix it and clean it up. What does it take to stay curious and to invest in, I forget what Sadie said, something about the sort of the fertile field, to do that, to instead of investing in the quick fix, immediate, urgent, to keep on investing in the long-term, broader, deeper. So what can be learned from this mess? What's the opportunity for somebody else to come in and, how could this mess be turned into something creative?
Jake, I got a question here. When a hive senses the queen, is from Julie Bergdahl. When a hive senses the queen's fading out, it may begin supersedure to prep for a new queen in order for the hive to survive. What kind of reaction did you get from the congregation when you began to shift your leadership style after a number of years?
The spring of this new design, I got shouted at in public 3 times. It was a pretty anxious response. And I doubted myself. So the anxiety was in myself. Was I being lazy? Was I, so I think that is part of differentiation, is bracing for what Ed Friedman called seduction and sabotage, the two, the two kinds of responses that can come.
We probably have time for one more question or comment. What are you thinking about? Cami Kelton, can I call you out? We have one of our VCFS faculty here, a very thoughtful person, Cami Kelton. What are you thinking about, Cami?
Hi, Eric. It's interesting to listen to this. I would not say that I would consider myself, more recently, I think of this maybe a little bit more, but historically, I've not really thought of myself as a leader. So I'm kind of thinking about some of the things that Jake has talked about that align with some of the efforts I've been making in my own life, right? And in my work as a therapist, some of my own family efforts that you're familiar with, Eric, and how they're very similar. The pieces of leadership that are getting talked about today are similar to some of the things that I've been experimenting with, trying to find out trying to think about when taking a stand is something you sort of decide an active doing, and when is it sort of a non-doing, and
Yeah,
something I've explored in my relationship, as you know, with my
that's a
sister.
good one. That's a good
Yeah.
frame.
Yeah.
I'm moved to say that it's a tremendous credit to Dr. Murray Bowen and the cadre of really good teachers that he gathered around them. That it's as useful to a psychotherapist in their own family as it is to a minister in Tennessee, as it is to a business executive,
Mm-hmm.
and on and on. That there really is such a broad utility to these ideas about leadership.
Yeah.
And Jake, I know you're just doing consulting work with lots of different types of people. So you want to end on anything on that? How's that journey going?
It's fascinating, and I think, to your point, to see how the concepts of systems thinking apply in such widely different contexts, and so that's just been gratifying. And like with being a butterfly in high school with the different cliques, I love moving into different work systems and being curious and learning from them as much as I hope they are from me.
Well, all right, folks, thank you for being here with us. We will keep you posted on our next interview in Free Together. And if you want to come and join me on that other show, the Leader Site Show, love to have you there. You're very welcome. Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much. That was very enjoyable, and appreciate your wisdom.
Thanks, Eric. Pleasure to be with you all. Take care. Bye-bye.